Hello, I'm Mario Toneguzzi, managing editor of Canada's Podcast, taking care of business today with Christina Santini, who is director of national affairs for the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. Thanks for joining us today, Christina.
Thank you for having me, Mario.
Okay, well, I want to talk to you a little bit about a report that the CFIB has put out regarding the impact of high payroll taxes in Canada. Can you talk a little bit about that first in general, Christina, and tell me, what is the overall impact of those payroll taxes?
Absolutely. So payroll taxes are a cost of doing business, and that's understood. The key challenge, of course, though, is how many there are in some jurisdictions, like Quebec. It goes up to 7, and employees may only be aware of one or two, such as CPP and EI. So le fardeau, the burden of it can be quite high, particularly when they change or when they increase. What does it mean? Well, higher taxes or increases in taxes mean that it increases costs for the employer. They then have to make the tough decision of, am I going to increase wages, increase prices? Am I going to be able to offer the wage increases I wanted to offer because now an additional dollar an hour costs that much more? Or actually, I'm already having trouble paying my employees. I now need to look at whether I can keep them on or offer them as many hours as I want.
Mhm.
So it introduces new challenges, and the purpose of the report is to make sure that government are conscious that there are a lot of trade-offs, a lot of impacts, and it is the number one uh, fiscal pressure on small business owners. 71% identified payroll taxes as being an issue for them because they have to pay it regardless of whether they're making profits.
So can you quantify it in any way? Like, what's an average there? What is a company paying out, or what's an employee paying out in payroll taxes?
Absolutely. We've done those calculations. On average, like nationally, employers pay on a $50,000 salary an additional $5,000, 5,067 cents. So $50,000 actually costs them $55,000. With regards to employees, they'll say, well, I'm supposed to get 50,000, but once you deduct CPP and EI, they're only actually getting around 46,000, depending on the jurisdiction they're in. And then that doesn't even include the personal taxes that get taken out. So right there, I mean, your purchasing power is gone, and your employer's ability to raise wages is also affected.
Yeah, so I guess there's two elements to this in terms of the impact, right? Let's talk first of all about the employers, right? And so obviously they're having to spend more money. Is there a fear or concern here that, well, first of all, all their costs of doing business are going up, so they're teetering, on whether they're surviving at all in this environment. And then secondly, it doesn't give you much incentive to go out and hire more people, right?
Exactly. It doesn't give you more incentives to hire people. It also, many of our members wrote in, I want to give my employer more, but it costs employee more, but it costs so much for me to do so. They
Yeah.
earn it. They don't understand why they are working more. They're technically earning more, but they're getting less after taxes. One of the things people might not be aware is that the CPP contribution rate has gone up over the last 5 years from 4.95% to 5.95%. It's an increase of over $1,000. That's less in the pocket of an individual earning 60,000 a year. Like that's huge. Particularly in a time where you're wondering how you're going to pay your bills, or are you able to afford that $200 caddy at the grocery market to feed a family of 4? Like these little amounts, and some will say, oh well, it's just pennies. Pennies add up.
They
It
do.
adds up for individuals, it adds up for employers and small businesses. And so that's what we're telling government is, like, you've got more increases coming. And on January 24th, we know there's going to be a second ceiling, and middle income individuals will be paying more in CPP. Yes, it's towards a future higher benefit, but the pressures are now. So maybe they should delay that introduction until this inflation is back to 2%, and that it doesn't have as much of a bite for employers and employees. So
Yeah.
that's one of the suggestions we're making. And then EI, We're anticipating announcements in the coming weeks on whether EI premium rates will go up or not. We're really hoping that they will not. Budget 2023 stated it shouldn't. That being said, if for whatever reason they're supposed to go up, we are going to be calling on government to institute a freeze and to potentially even pay off the deficit that exists because of no fault of employers' employees. The deficit in the current EI account, which would put pressure on raising those premium rates, is all because of pandemic debt
Mm.
and pandemic-related measures.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, the challenges that consumers are facing, right? They're going to cut back on their spending, and I guess it's just the old domino effect, right? And that obviously has impact on all the businesses, right?
It's complex and it's all interlinked. You're saying it quite correctly, Mario, in terms of, okay, people take home less. Well, now they're spending less and demand is going down, but that means business revenues are going down and they can't pay their debts, they can't pay their obligations or their suppliers. So what does it mean? In the short term, they either make changes to try to remain viable or they consider closing their doors. There are a lot of factors at play. And this is one within the government's control to ensure that they don't go up.
Exactly. Well, thanks very much, Christina, for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having us, Mario.
All right, that was Christina Santini, who is Director of National Affairs for the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. I'm Mario Toneguzzi, taking care of business. Thank you for joining us today.